Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Illuminati. The man who rules the world takes on the head of the global elite in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes Illuminati on Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. The United States had its second worst year for mass shootings, and in 2023 there were 649 mass shootings, making it the second most violent year for mass shootings next to 2021. Now, I had predicted as far back as 2017 that there would be an increase in frequency of these mass shootings, and predicted that these mass shootings would increase because of America's refusal to acknowledge the man crisis. Now, most politicians and pundits want to say that the main reason why we see this increase in frequency of mass shootings is due to the lack of gun control laws. However, I believe that whole theory is completely disproven because most of the mass shooters who participated in this gun violence bought all of their guns legally. Now, these same politicians and pundits and experts also want to say that many of these individuals possibly were mentally ill. However, that theory, I believe, is completely disproven because many of these individuals would not have been able to buy their guns legally because under the federal Brady bill, if these individuals were mentally ill, this would have been caught in the background check, and these individuals would have been denied an ability to purchase a firearm. So when I take this look at these statistics as related to this being the second worst year for mass shootings, it basically proves every point that I make as related to all of these increases in mass shootings being connected to the man crisis. And the main motivation for these individuals to pick up these firearms to participate in this gun violence is mainly because most of these individuals have been socially engineered to become beta males, and these socially engineered beta males do not know how to function as related to having a life in the world. And because these men do not know how to navigate life as a man, what happens is these males become extremely frustrated, extremely angry. They wind up simmering and boiling in anger, and then eventually they wind up exploding in a rage because they can't make life in the world. And because they can't make life work in the world, what these individuals look to do is destroy the world around them. And this is the core reason why we have seen this uptick in mass shootings that has basically escalated ever since the late 1960s, where we saw a complete change of the family due to the rise of the feminist movement. Now, back in the 1960s, as we saw the feminist movement rise, we saw the government and big business basically enable many of the feminists, hoping to get a new crop of consumers that they believe would profit all of them and benefit them economically. It would benefit the government because they would have a group of women basically controlling the household and being in the workplace and being a more submissive worker. And for big business, this meant they could pay the female workers cheaper and have a consumer that they know they could depend on. And this is the main reason why they basically wind up changing the family dynamics. However, as they changed the family dynamics to make the woman the head of the household, what this did was create a family structure that created dysfunction that we are currently seeing in America. And this dysfunction is because we have women heading the household, and as the women head the household, what they are saying that they could raise their boys to become men. Unfortunately, the males that they have socially engineered are these beta males, and these beta males, because they submit to female authority figures and see females in leadership positions, do not have a sense of purpose. And because they do not have a sense of purpose or direction, what happens to these males is they feel powerless about controlling anything in their lives. And because they feel powerless about having any control over anything in their lives, what this does is create a foundation of frustration in these men who do not know how to survive in the world because they have not been taught proper male life skills or proper male survival skills by their fathers, who they were alienated from by their mothers, in many cases as related to divorce or single motherhood. And because these men have been alienated from their fathers, they have nobody to teach them that the world works differently for a man than it does a woman. And because these males are not taught that the world works differently for a man than it does a woman, what happens to these males is they are trying to make the world work the way it does for a woman, who can basically, due to our gynocentric society, get any sort of benefit due to the support she receives from government, big business, politics, and the men who control them. These males think that they can get the same kind of treatment that women do, not understanding that a man's survival is completely different and that a man has to go out here and work hard as related to his survival, and that he is the only one who will be able to take care of himself. This is what the beta male doesn't understand about life as related to being a man, and because he doesn't get these lessons from a father in his early age, what happens to this male is he grows up into adulthood, and as he grows up into adulthood, expecting the world to cater to him the way it does a woman, he winding up finding out that the world isn't looking to cater to him, and it's a rude awakening that basically shocks his system. And as it shocks his system, he becomes frustrated and angry because the world isn't like his mother told him it was. And as he's not being able to receive any of the success he sees the women receiving, what this does is, again, make that foundation of frustration turn into a cauldron of anger, and that cauldron of anger simmers and boils until these individuals get triggered to explode in a rage, where they participate in a spectrum of violent behaviors. And on the far side is, at the beginning, is yelling and screaming and throwing a tantrum, but on the extreme side are the violence that mass shooters participate in. And the mass shooters' main reason for participating in these violent incidents is because many of these males just do not know how to make the world work for them. They do not know how to set a course to achieve anything in life. They have no sense of purpose, no sense of direction, and no understanding of how to achieve or accomplish anything in the real world. So what these men do, because they have been living in rose-colored realities when they have to deal with the real world, is they get upset and want to destroy the world around them and take the lives of innocent people. And this is the core reason why we had the second worst year for mass shootings here in the United States. However, many of those politicians, business people, and those who are in society don't want to acknowledge that this is the core reason the man crisis is going on, nor do they even want to acknowledge a man crisis exists, or that the breakdown of the American family is the main reason why we are seeing this record second year for mass shootings. Because the reason why we are seeing this second worst year for mass shootings has to do with the family, but nobody wants to talk about that because that would mean alienating most of America's women and criticizing them about the dysfunctional way they have been parenting ever since the days of the feminist movement. Because it was the white feminist who said that she could raise a boy to become a man. And sadly, we see after 60 years, the socially engineered beta male that she created cannot be a man and does not know how to function as a man. No, we clearly see that the beta male that she raised does not know how to make life work in the world because he has learned masculinity from a woman. And because he has learned masculinity from a woman, he does not know how the world works for a man, and that's what's leading to this crisis where we have so many of these individuals going out and believing that they need to destroy the world around them because they don't know the process of how to make things work. Because only a father can teach a boy to become a man, but many of the feminists, they don't want to believe this fact. No, they want to say that it all has to do with guns, but we have to take a critical look at what motivates these boys to believe they need to pick up a gun and attack random people in soft target incidents. And the main reason why they want to do this is because there is a complete collapse of the American family, and that really is shown to me by the ages of these shooters continuing to get younger. And as the ages of these shooters has gotten younger, and I have studied the ages of these individuals and I'm listening to their reasoning, it clearly shows me that these boys are not being parented, like in the case of a 17-year-old Texas teenager whose mother went out here and bought him a gun because he said he wanted to participate in a homicide. And in the case of Ethan Crumbley, whose parents basically went out here and enabled him to participate in a mass shooting, and Adam Lanza, who came before him, who participated in the mass shooting in that town. I mean, I'm looking at these mass shooters getting younger and becoming more violent, and it clearly shows me that there is a problem with parenting, but nobody wants to talk about that because big business doesn't want to lose its biggest customer, which is the American mother, and they don't want to hold the American mother accountable for the dysfunctional way she's been raising her boys to become men. And that's what's fueling this increase in mass shootings that are a major part of the man crisis. The main reason why we see this is because of the dysfunctional way these boys have been raised to become men by women who don't understand that the world is, again, a completely different place for a man. And if a man is not taught about male life skills and male survival skills, like having strength of character, discipline, and resolve in the face of adversity, what's going to happen to that boy is that boy is going to go into a world where he's expected to be completely different than a woman. And as he enters that world where he's expected to know certain things that only men can teach other men through social interaction, what's going to happen to that boy is he's going to become very frustrated, very angry, and he's going to be just simmering in anger because he can't take the things like criticism and slights and all sorts of stuff that men are expected to. What happens to that boy, because he can't cope with life, is he wants to destroy the world around him. But you can't explain this to people because America refuses to acknowledge that there is a man crisis and refuses to acknowledge it because they don't want to alienate most of the women and don't want to say that the women, by messing up the family, created this man crisis in the 1960s. However, when you look at the data as related to mass shootings, there has been a statistical uptick in these shootings ever since I would say about the late 1970s when we started to see the rise in no-fault divorce, the rise in boys being placed in daycare, the rise of boys being put in the systems of the gynocentric public school system. We have seen an increase in these mass shootings, and that was even in the 90s where we had an assault weapons ban. Even with an assault weapons ban, we continue to see an increase in these incidents, and it doesn't matter about the gun control laws. If your males are not taught self-control, you will still have an increase in violence, because back in the 1950s, before the rise of the feminist movement, we actually had gun classes in high school, but we had low gun crime. And the main reason why we had low gun crime is because we had fathers in the home to provide boys with structure and order and be a model for manhood that would show them an example of what it meant to be a man that would sit down and directly teach his sons male life skills and male survival skills, and teach him how to cope and navigate with life, and teach him his role as a man, and teach him how to be a head of household and be a leader. But we don't have that anymore, and because we don't have men in the community with an active role leading the boys to become men and teaching them what they need to become men, what we have are a group of dysfunctional males in crisis, and these dysfunctional males are basically out here participating in this kind of violence, and they participate in this kind of violence because they are frustrated and angry and don't know how to make life work in a world that basically is gynocentric, because many of these males can't get jobs because women control most of the jobs in America. They don't have any sort of ability to get political power because women control the voting bloc. And many of these males, because they feel like there is no place for them in America, want to get out in some ways. And this has been talked about for some time on alternative platforms as related to men in America. But mainstream America refuses to talk about it because mainstream America believes that this is just random individuals instead of looking at the bigger picture of the pattern. Because when you look at the bigger picture of the pattern, it's clear that there is a man crisis in America, and I would say even across the globe. There are just so many men out here with no direction and no purpose because they don't know about their connection to God. They don't know about their role as a head. They don't know about their role as a leader or an authority figure. And they don't know how to take their power as men. So they believe the only way they can take their power is through gun violence. But we don't want to talk about this, and we don't want to talk about the actual solution, which is investing in men, because many of the feminists, they don't want to give up their power, and because they don't want to give up their power in these positions as related to business and politics, this is why we don't have the investment in men, and that's why we see all of these increases in frequency of mass shootings across the country, because the only solution to solving this man crisis is to invest in our boys and teach them that they have value, teach them that they have worth, teach them that they have purpose, teach them that they have somebody there who's going to direct them and guide them. This is what we need to deal with this whole situation, because when I look at the increase in frequency of mass shootings that I talked about as far back as 2017, and I look at the ages of the shooters continuing to get younger, it clearly correlates to me a complete breakdown of the American family that has gone on for the last 60 years because of the rise of the feminist movement and their ideal that a woman could raise a boy to become a man. But we see that the boys that she's raising to become men are not these kinder, gentler, softer males. No, these kinder, gentler, softer males are not hard enough to be able to survive in the rough world. And because they're not hard enough to have that discipline and resolve to persevere in the face of adversity, This is why these men are just completely falling apart, because these women spoil and coddle them by giving them everything except the intangibles of manhood, which are only provided by men, who will give a man an understanding of what it means to have dignity, what it means to have self-worth and self-respect, a man to be taught his role as a man under God's order. These are only things that a man can teach a boy, but if a boy doesn't get those lessons from a man, you will have a nation in crisis, and a nation that won't be able to function, because no one will be safe, because these men don't know about their roles to protect and provide for their society, and they won't have incentive to do this because nobody has invested in them, and since nobody has invested in them, they have no stake in society, and because they have no stake in society, these men believe that they can destroy the world around them, because mothers haven't invested in time in nurturing them, fathers haven't invested time in giving them guidance, and no one has given them an understanding of their value to society. But nobody wants to talk about this. Yes, we'll talk about the shootings, but we won't talk about the real reasons behind the shootings, because the real reasons behind the shootings basically hold many of these politicians and business people directly accountable, and hold the feminists accountable. But they don't want to talk about the real reasons, because talking about the real reasons for the man crisis basically puts a bullseye on all of these individuals and holds them completely accountable for the sad state of our union. Now, if you want to learn more about how beta males are socially engineered and why they are dysfunctional and how their dysfunction leads to all of the violence we're seeing that's increasing in frequency across this country, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you'd like to see me make more videos regarding the man crisis, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.